I've been thinking a lot lately about why people quit. Not just jobs, but dreams, goals, relationships, things they once cared about deeply. Because growing up, I always thought quitting meant you failed. Like if you walked away from something, it automatically meant you weren't strong enough to handle it. So when things got difficult, my first instinct was to always push harder. That's exactly what happened to me when I started working for that company. At first, I thought I was building the future I always wanted. I was proud of myself. I felt productive, ambitious, focused, like I was finally becoming the version of myself I always imagined. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself whether I was happy and started focusing only on whether I was doing enough. And honestly, I didn't even notice how much work was changing me until I started feeling exhausted all the time. That's when I started to realize something. You know what I realized after working for that company? Sometimes people don't quit because they're weak. They quit because they've been strong for way too long. When I first started working for that company, I genuinely thought I found something worth giving everything to. Like, I was willing to sacrifice sleep, energy, time, whatever it took. And at first it actually felt rewarding. I liked being busy. I liked being needed. It gave me this sense of purpose, like I was finally building something for myself, instead of just watching life pass by. So whenever things got hard, I didn't really question it. I just thought that's part of the process, right? Everybody says success is supposed to be difficult anyway. But after a while, I noticed my entire life started revolving around work. I'd wake up already stressed. Even during breaks, my mind never actually rested because I was always thinking about what I still need to do for the day. Then I reached a point where even when I wasn't working, I still feel mentally stuck there. And I think the worst part is, nobody really tells you when hard work starts becoming unhealthy. People praise you for it. They see you grinding and say you're disciplined, dedicated, ambitious. Meanwhile, internally, you're slowly becoming exhausted in ways people can't see. There were moments where I'd sit there after finishing everything I needed to do. And instead of feeling proud of myself, I just feel numb. Like, okay, now what? Then the next day starts and it's the same cycle all over again. At some point, I realized I wasn't even enjoying the work anymore. I was just scared to stop because I already gave so much of myself to it. At some point, I wasn't even enjoying the work anymore. I was just scared to stop because I already gave so much of myself to it. That's honestly what kept me there longer than I should have stayed. Not passion, not motivation, just a feeling that if I quit now, then maybe all of the stress and sacrifices would feel pointless. And that messed with me for a long time because I tied my self-worth so much to being productive. If work was going well, I felt okay. If things slowed down or failed, I'd start questioning myself completely. That kind of pressure changes you without you noticing. You become irritable, distracted, emotionally tired all the time. Even simple things stop feeling enjoyable because your brain never fully turns off anymore. Then one day, I caught myself thinking, why do I feel trapped by something I once wanted so badly? And honestly, that question hit me hard because I realized I kept waiting for some future moment where everything would finally feel worth it. Like maybe one after another, one achievement, another milestone, one more sacrifice, I'd finally feel at peace. But the peace never came to me, and there was just another thing to chase right after. That's when it finally clicked for me. I wasn't living anymore. I was just constantly trying to keep up. And I think that's how I knew it was time for me to walk away. Not because I was lazy, not because I couldn't handle pressure. I just didn't want to become the kind of person who sacrifices their entire mental health just to prove they can endure more. And after that, I wish I could say immediately that I know what to do. I didn't. For a while, I kept going like nothing happened. That's the weird thing about burnout. Even after realizing something is destroying you still try to survive it because you've already built your entire routine around enduring it. And so I kept showing up. But mentally, something already changed in me. I stopped feeling connected to the work. Every task started feeling heavier than it should have. Even small problems irritated me because it kept keeping me down. And deep down, I was already exhausted before the day even began. And I think that's when fear started kicking in. Because once the idea of leaving enters your head, suddenly everything becomes confusing. You start questioning yourself. What if I'm just tired? What if I regret leaving? What if I never get the opportunity like this again in the future? So instead of making a decision, I stayed stuck in between. Not happy enough to enjoy the work anymore, but too afraid to let go of it completely. Honestly, that phase was probably the hardest part. Because when you already know something is hurting you, but you still can't walk away, every single day starts feeling heavier emotionally. I remember trying to convince myself that maybe I just needed one good week to feel motivated again. One successful moment. One sign that everything would feel finally worth it. One sign that everything would finally feel worth it. But every time I reached the goal, the satisfaction disappeared almost immediately. Then I was back to pressure again. Back to stress. Back to feeling like I was constantly chasing something I could never fully reach. That's when I realized the problem wasn't temporary exhaustion. I had built my entire life around pressure. I didn't know how to exist constantly without worrying about progress, performance, or whether I was doing enough. And once I realized that, I started seeing how much work I had. I realized seeing how much work had changed me as a person. I became emotionally unavailable to people around me because my brain was always occupied. I stopped enjoying slow moments because relaxing made me anxious. Even when nothing was happening, I still feel like it was, or to say, I was behind somehow. And that's no longer ambition, that's survival mode. And eventually, I had this moment where I asked myself something simple. If success finally comes, but I'm mentally destroyed by the time I get there, will it still be worth it? I couldn't answer that question honestly anymore because the truth was, I missed feeling human. I missed feeling the energy outside of work. I missed being able to enjoy things without guilt. I missed being present instead of constantly mentally elsewhere. And I think that's the part nobody sees when someone quits. People only see the decision. They don't see the months of mental exhaustion before it. The constant internal arguments, the guilt, the fear, the pressure of feeling like you're throwing away something that you spent so much time building. Leaving wasn't one brave dramatic moment for me. It was more like finally admitting to myself that I couldn't keep living that way forever. And honestly, after stepping away, I realized something. I wasn't actually afraid of failing. I was afraid that if I stopped working nonstop, I wouldn't know who I was anymore. And that's how much of myself I gave to that job. And once I admitted that to myself, everything got quiet for a while. Not peaceful, just unfamiliar. Because for so long, my entire life revolved around being busy, that stress became a normal thing to me. Pressure became part of my identity, so when I finally stepped away from all of it, I didn't immediately feel free. I feel lost, or I felt. There were mornings where I'd wake up and instinctively think about work before remembering I didn't have to do anything anymore. And honestly, that messed me more than I expected. Because when you spend so much time attaching your work to productivity, resting starts to feel wrong. I kept feeling guilty for slowing down, like I always needed to do something to deserve peace because in my mind, if I'm not doing anything, then I do not deserve to rest. And that mindset doesn't disappear overnight. I remember trying to distract myself at first, telling myself I'd quickly move on, quickly recover, quickly figure everything out. But burnout doesn't really work like that. Your body can rest for a few days, sure, but mentally, that exhaustion stays with you longer than people realize. For the first time in a long time, I actually had space to think. And that's when everything hit me properly. How long I ignored myself, how many times I forced myself to keep going when I was already mentally exhausted, and how much of my happiness I postponed for later. It made me realize something that's kinda sad. That I spent so much time trying to build a successful future that I completely disappeared from my own present. I started looking back at who I was before all of this, before the pressure, before every day became about performance and expectations, and honestly, I missed that version of myself. Not because life was easier back then, but because I felt more alive, more connected, more human, like I said. And slowly, I started understanding that my life wasn't supposed to feel like one endless race where you constantly prove your worth through exhaustion. Maybe ambition is healthy until it starts replacing your personality. Maybe discipline is good until it destroys your ability to continue living. And I think that realization changed me the most, because for the first time I stopped asking, how much more can I endure? And started asking myself, why do I think suffering is the only way I deserve success? And that question honestly changed the way I look at work completely. Now, whenever I think about that company, I don't hate it. I don't regret everything either. A part of me is still thankful for what it taught me. But I also know I stayed longer than I should have because I confused self-destruction with dedication. And I know a lot of people are probably living like that right now, working non-stop, ignoring themselves, telling themselves that they'll rest later, and not realizing they're slowly losing the ability to enjoy the life they're supposed to be working hard to build. That's why I wanted to talk about this, because quitting isn't always failure. Sometimes it's the moment you finally stop sacrificing yourself for something that keeps asking for more and more of you while giving less and less. And honestly, I think learning when to walk away is just as important as learning how to work hard in the first place. Before all of this, I thought success was just about how much pressure you could do to survive. I thought being hardworking meant ignoring yourself until you finally made it. But now I realize there's a huge difference between building a future and sacrificing yourself just to reach one. I'm still grateful for everything, like I said, because that work taught me discipline, responsibility, and it showed me how much I could push myself. Just because you can endure something doesn't mean you're supposed to stay in it forever. And honestly, I think a lot of people are living like this right now. They wake up exhausted, they carry stress every single day, and they keep telling themselves they'll feel better after the next paycheck. Meanwhile, they're slowly losing themselves in the process. That's why I wanted to talk about this. Because quitting isn't always about giving up. Sometimes it's about finally recognizing when something is costing you more than it's giving back. And maybe real strength isn't forcing yourself to suffer endlessly just to prove you're dedicated. Maybe real strength is knowing when to step away before you completely lose yourself. trying to survive something that was never really meant for you to consume your entire life. If this video resonated with you, please consider subscribing and maybe leaving a like so I can make more for us to talk about. And I know it's early, but I really am thankful for all the support you guys have been giving. And for the 200 new subscribers, thank you so much for that. And we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye and take care.